welcome back to Tap Tempo with me, Matt Lang. This week I've been pretty much working nonstop on a Triphonic remix. It is the 10-year anniversary of Triphonic's debut album, Emergence, so there is a remix package coming up with a number of other very cool artists, and I've been obsessively getting really into the glitch, frame of mind again doing it. So that's been awesome. So this week on the show I have Rinzen. And he just debuted his first EP out with Mousetrap about a month ago, and it's a concept EP. He discusses it further in the episode. But what makes Rinzen particularly interesting, aside from he's, of course, a fellow artist, his background is in journalism, and he's been writing for Dancing Astronaut, Billboard for years. And that really, it gives him a unique perspective, certainly on how to market his brand, but also the direction of how he's taking it. We talked a lot about his artist direction, his past in the journalism world, but also a lot of creative process. So it was really neat to find that we actually share a lot of similarities in that regard, even down to the books we read. So I enjoyed it. I learned a lot about him that I didn't know. So here's Rinzen.
Well, you could almost look at it as a modern version of the idea of a coffee house where you're meeting just to hang out with people and discuss ideas.
Yeah.
While also kind of changing your psychological state,
Totally.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's the same kind of concept. It's just, it's a social meeting place.
Yeah.
And I mean, I go by myself to the brewery down the street.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that.
What do you do when you go solo?
I sit at the bar. I order whatever beer I want on tap, and it's, whatever varietal of IPA they have, but that changes.
Yeah.
And, if there ends up being someone sitting next to me who I want to talk to, I'll talk to them.
Okay.
If there's not, I don't.
Okay.
And that's it. I mean, sometimes I just go just to get out of the house.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
Just to change the scenery. I mean, if I've been in here for all day, just to go and, I mean, I know all the bartenders there at this point.
Yeah.
Because, I live here. So even just seeing a bartender who's a friendly face, that changes.
No, I mean, I think about this a lot because I also predominantly work from home, and just how important it is just to leave your house and to interact with other people. And just, I mean, if you're sitting alone in your house all day, it's a box, and you're not getting other influences, you're not having other interactions, and it definitely impacts your creative process as well, because I mean, it's isolating, and you're not pulling in these different experiences.
And it's the ultimate cabin fever.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's not like you've just been sitting at home and, because you have a sick day or something, so you're in front of the TV on the couch.
Yeah, no.
Mentally, you're working really hard. It's, it's physically, well, not really physically exhausting, only because you're not moving. But
sure,
it's certainly emotionally exhausting.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, you're going crazy because you've been in the same room for 12 hours.
Yeah, I try to make a point just to go outside every day just for a little bit. It's so strange because I technically could do the majority of my work from home, like non-music work.
Yeah.
But I go to cafes just for the fact of being in public, and just the fact of having other people working around you and being in a public environment. I'm way more productive just at home. There's a lot of distractions, like you find yourself walking to your kitchen every hour, even though you're not hungry, or you're basically doing anything you can just to not actually do your work.
Oh, that's the never-ending cup of coffee for me.
Exactly. If it's tea for me, it's the same thing. Yeah. But if I'm at a coffee shop, it's like there's a little bit of public pressure too, where it's like I'm not gonna just go waste 30 minutes on Facebook, because I mean, I just why am I here doing this?
I read the New York Times.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I have the New York Times app on my phone.
Sure.
And a lot of times, if I'm at a bar and I'm just there just to get out of the house.
Yeah,
I catch up on current events.
Okay.
And I feel, a little antisocial, and I have to turn, the brightness of the screen all the way down.
But that's better than being on Facebook or just Twitter, where you're just twiddling your thumbs at the bar. Just I could be doing this at home.
Well, I could be reading the New York Times at home too.
Yeah, sure. But I think at least being in that different environment, you would feel weird if you were just on Facebook or Twitter and you were sitting there for 45 minutes. Whereas at least reading the New York Times, I don't want to say it's productive, but at least you're
well, it's more nourishing.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like being on a social network when you are surrounded by people.
Yeah, it's a little ironic.
Yeah. Well, it's very normal in this day and age too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I think I was listening to a podcast and someone was talking about their views on social media, and they said they try and view their phone as almost an interdimensional portal, where it's like every time you're opening your phone, you're conscious of the fact that you're accessing this digital world. So your phone is in effect like a portal. So it's just like a changing of a frame of reference. So it's like, if you know that you're going to pull up your phone and you're going to go on Facebook or your email, you're knowing the fact that you're about to leave your normal reality and you're going to enter this digital thing.
Escape.
Yeah, but it almost, if you can give it that significance, then it makes it so you're not just going to, just be scrolling as trivially, because you're aware of the fact that, I'm about to take myself out of my normal reality, and like this is yeah, I mean,
well, I think the downside of people being aware of that is that they use it as a crutch.
Sure.
And if they're in a social situation where they don't feel 100% comfortable in, they'll turn to that as their escape. And then in a way it creates the walls around you, so no one's going to come up and talk to you. And then you also are kind of sealing your own fate.
Yeah.
But
I think they're not conscious of the fact that they're doing that so much. I think they do it out of habit.
Yeah.
But I think if you do view it as an escape, as you said, or you see that it's kind of taking you out of your normal reality, then you're less likely to do it, I think, just because you're accepting the consequences of entering that state, Ideally, of course.
I don't know if you're necessarily less likely to do it. I would like to think you would be.
Yeah.
But the other side of it is you'll do it on purpose then.
Sure.
Because you know what you're capable of.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the same concept as like meditation. It's like when you can realize that you're getting trapped in these thoughts or whatever and pull yourself out of it. Same thing with social media. If you can realize that you're scrolling or you're on your phone in a place where you don't necessarily need to be, that ability to pull yourself out of it, I think just being able to cultivate that. You know? Yeah. Easier said than done, of course.
It is. But like, it's interesting too, because I mean, you're definitely of the generation. You're of the iPhone generation.
Yeah, sure.
And I mean, a big part of what you do, like aside from your artist career as Rinzen, I mean, not even like Billboard, but Dancing Astronaut. I mean, that's an iPhone blog, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go to the website, it is iPhone. It's built for the iPhone,
tailored for the iPhone. Sure. Yeah, of course.
And I'm sure the way you've had to write articles, or you've been encouraged to write articles, has to encourage the mentality that people, or not necessarily encourage the mentality, but you're aware of the fact.
It's something to be conscious of.
So you're tailoring certain things to the iPhone crowd. Yeah.
So are you just asking, like, how am I able to escape that necessarily, or how am I able to detach myself from that?
I guess that's part of it.
Yeah.
Really, I was going to say, how does that affect you?
Yeah. Well, honestly, obviously, it's a big consideration from, like you said, from a writing standpoint, even from a music standpoint. But I feel fortunate in the fact that, like, I don't feel that connected to my phone and just like social media in general. I try to adopt a more like utilitarian view towards it, where it's like, if I am gonna be on Facebook or Twitter or anything, or be sharing articles on that, it's purely for the fact that I'm trying to share content, or there's an intention behind it. I mean, I definitely still get tripped up pretty easily, just because you find yourself trying to do something productive on a social platform, and then, something catches your eye, like you see a friend posting about something, or there's a discussion, and it's like 30 minutes later, you've gone by, and you're just like, wait, what?
What the fuck did I just do?
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, I obviously am just as guilty of that as everyone else.
Right.
But I think I'm also able to approach it with intention when possible, at least.
Well, I think you have a greater insight.
Yeah.
Certainly a more vast insight into it. I mean, the psychology behind it.
Totally. Yeah. Even just from, I spent at least a year or two like running the Dancing Astronaut Facebook page, and that kind of opened up a whole new world of like analytics and,
oh my God, was that
the daily content
depressing?
Grind. How so? Just seeing that side of it?
Well, because the clickbait side of it.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, knowing that you have to basically to create or catch the attention of so many people.
Of course, yeah.
You have to create these really eye-popping headlines.
Yeah. I've always been very anti-clickbait, as I think most people are. But, to your point.
But there are lots of blogs that are so pro clickbait.
Yeah.
Like unapologetically.
I mean, I don't think it does get quite unapologetic.
I mean, how many times have you seen a headline like, this track is the most amazing thing ever. It'll change your life. And you hear it and it sounds like the exact same thing from last week.
Of course.
And none of it's good.
Of course. And I was so anti-clickbait, and then I started having to run these pages, and I saw how depressing organic reach is when you try to do things the right way. You try to write quality articles and share them, at a convenient time.
People don't care.
Yeah. And sometimes it works, and it's great when it does. A lot of times it falls flat on its face, and you have to resort to these tactics sometimes just to break through the noise.
Yeah.
And the fact is, there's always someone else who's going to resort to those tactics every single time, or they're going to take it a little bit farther.
There are tons of careers that are built on those tactics.
There are. And I would like to think that if we were in a different social media landscape where, organic reach wasn't decreasing, that maybe we wouldn't have to resort to these things. But I don't know. That the reality is we are, and that clickbait's not going anywhere. But fortunately, I've been able to remove myself from that kind of world anymore, and I don't necessarily have to think about clickbait anymore. I don't need to run social media for anyone. So,
except yourself.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not going to clickbait my own presence. That would be silly.
People do.
Do they? Yeah.
Are you kidding?
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever seen...
How many careers are started off of Instagram?
Yeah, sure, okay.
It's the same concept.
Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah. But no, I mean... I used to be so heavily invested in the blogging world, and I used to see all that stuff every day. Just that was my daily life. Yeah. And I mean, it definitely made me a little bit jaded, and I got a little bit pessimistic about things. But now it's like, now that I'm a little more removed from that world, it's like I don't even see it as much, and so it doesn't bother me as much. Yeah. I know a lot of people will are always complaining about clickbait, and
I think it's out of sight, out of mind.
This blog said this, exactly, but it's like I'm not even seeing it anymore, so it doesn't bother me at all. I'm sure it's still there, but it's I don't know.
I'm sure it is.
It's not a part of my daily life anymore. So I mean, I don't know. At the end of the day, this is always how I viewed it. It's like, music writers and bloggers, whatever you want to call them, are already underpaid as it is. They're just trying to get by and to create a business model in an environment or landscape that's not necessarily optimized for them. So I mean, I sympathize with them, because they're just they're just trying to get by and just trying to get content out there, and they've got to be scrappy. I wish they didn't have to be or resort to as cheap of tactics as they do. But at the end of the day, they're just writers trying to get paid. So.
Well, the irony of it all is, for the fact that writers get paid so little, you went and you did the dumbest thing ever, and then you became an artist after. That's
true.
Not the way forward.
I know,
but I mean, but what's really interesting about that is because your background in journalism, it gives you really a foresight that most upcoming artists will never have experience with. I mean, you only just put out your debut EP a month ago?
Yeah, exactly.
But you have years of journalism behind that.
Yeah.
So what do you think the biggest takeaways from Billboard, DA, all that, as far as launching your own artist career?
Sure. Well, I mean, like you were saying, I mean, I spent 4 years just writing, and the majority of that time was spent analyzing other artists, usually just a lot purely for fun, but also for work. So I think I was able to study a lot of different artists' careers. I saw a lot of artists launch their own careers and was kind of able to pick up on what tactics worked and what didn't. And I mean, the biggest takeaway I had was just like to not rush the process at all. And I mean, you really want to make as big of an impact as you can when you begin. And even if that means like launching your project a year later. So I think when I tried to apply it to my own career, it was just really taking the time to lay out like a launch strategy, like a timeline, and just really putting as much energy and intention behind each release and making sure everything had the most impact possible. So I mean, I adopted some other strategies that I've seen other artists use, and just knowing the media landscape, I think, gives me an upper hand. You know, I mean, I know like how to...
Well, undoubtedly. I mean, in so many ways, even just down to connections.
Yeah, well, that's been a huge part as well. I mean, just from writing for 4 years and living in LA, I've met a lot of other writers.
Right.
Just because, I mean, those are the people in the same circles. I mean, they're doing the same thing. So fortunately, when it did come time to launch my artist career, I had people who I could send my music to, and I'm not just Joe Schmo over here who they've never met from the other side of the world, just sending them a random track. I mean, I've corresponded with these people and hung out with them.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I mean, and as you know, that carries a lot of weight in this industry. Like a familiar face,
that carries
a lot
more weight
farther
than any PR person ever.
Yeah. And it's funny because I even worked in PR for 9 months as well. So I write my own press releases, you know, I mean...
Yeah, do you?
I do. Yeah. Oh, it combines the writing background as well.
I don't do it only because I don't feel I'll be impartial enough.
But why do you have to be impartial? It's your song.
Well, it's both. I won't be impartial enough, but I also won't be arrogant enough.
Okay.
I won't write, you know...
You'll be too humble?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I won't write the headline of, you know, this track's going to change your life. I just won't do it.
But I mean...
I'll be like, you might like it.
Yeah, but I don't know. No one wants to read a press release that's being like, this is the best track that's been released the entire year. It's like, no one's buying into that. People appreciate honesty.
But people click it on Facebook.
They do.
That's the thing.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole other story. Yeah.
So, I mean, but that's the funny thing. 'Cause, I mean, that is, you know, part of your background.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, of course. And I honestly am really grateful for it. The whole time I was writing and I was meeting all these people and making these connections, I didn't have any idea that it would, you know, be advantageous to me in the future. It was more just like, oh, I'm meeting all these people. This is so cool. I'm meeting artists as well. I don't know how this is going to help or be beneficial, but I'm really curious about this, and I'm happy to be meeting these people. It just so happened that I decided to go into the artist side of things, and oh, look, now I have like a network of friends who I can send my music to.
But it didn't just so happen.
Yeah. No, of course. No, of course, this was always in the back of my mind, but I mean...
So what made you finally take that step out? I mean, besides, you know, I mean, you went to Icon. Like,
I did.
You have production background and all that. But what finally was, you know, ultimately the kick?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean...
The tipping point.
Yeah, so it started all the way back in college. I started as a DJ, as many people do, and realized I could only get so far just as a DJ. And so, you know, I downloaded Ableton. I spent basically 2 years just studying YouTube tutorials and just slowly learning it. Got a job in PR and was working that. It was a great job, actually. But I don't know, I just had this kind of restlessness where I could see myself going down that road. I could see myself going down the writing road as well. And I knew I would enjoy it, but it didn't quite feel like the perfect fit. And, you know, the entire time I was also making music, and that was the thing that was exciting me. So it kind of just reached a boiling point where I was like, I mean, I kind of just want to take this leap because why not? Because if I don't, this nagging sensation that I'm feeling is only going to get worse.
That's the disease right there.
It is. And a lot of people will kind of ignore that. And I think that leads to a lot of other problems because, I mean, I think it starts to infect all of your life if you ignore that impulse. So I decided basically to just quit my job at the time and to enroll in Icon. I'd been producing for about 2 years before that. But, you know, going to there, it's a year-long program, and you're immersed in it basically every day. And it totally accelerated everything. And it made me realize, like, oh, I can actually kind of make a career out of this, or at least I could go down that road and attempt to. So, I mean, yeah, like I said, it was just almost a curiosity within myself, or a calling, whatever you want to say, that I just felt compelled to follow. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's the disease.
Yeah. Why is it a disease?
Because you can't stop. It'll eat you out from the inside. You just have to create.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a complete compulsion, and that's the beauty in it, and that's the curse of it.
Yeah.
And that is just the reality of it. And everyone who lives with it knows it. Exactly.
And as you were saying earlier, I went from one underpaid career to another. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's like I even if I was to take a normal job or an office job or do something else, I would still have that thing eating at me from the inside. And I know eventually I would be pulled to do this again.
Yeah.
So in my eyes, it's like, why not just try to do it now and figure it out? You know?
Of course. I mean, it was pure mockery.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
I obviously understand.
Yeah, of course.
Cynicism, what have you, sarcasm.
Yeah.
But, okay, so let's go into Rinzen, because we're talking about your artist career.
Sure.
And the name Rinzen, it's the obscure Japanese term.
Yeah.
And what made you choose that?
Yeah, so...
Why not your name? Why? I mean, this is because, you know, because you have a marketing background.
Okay.
You chose to use an alias as opposed to your given name.
Yeah.
And, like, what's the thought process behind that?
Yeah, I like the idea of getting to create or build a character. If I were to use a given name, my given name, there's already a lot of associations with that from writing or just from people who know me. But getting to create this thing, this character that you will, if you will, you get to, it's almost like...
You get to reinvent a whole persona.
Exactly. Yeah. And I really love that about it. You can give it an entire backstory. You can give it a meaning. You can give it...
No one's going to say Michael Sundius is an asshole. They'll say Rinzen's an asshole.
Yeah.
But, like, you get out, you know, scot-free.
And there's... it's nice to have... it's nice for it to be detached from your normal name because, like you said, it's like it's another thing. Like you have yourself, but then you have this character that you can embody when you perform or when you make music.
The persona.
A persona, exactly. Yeah. And there's almost a little bit of element of theater to it.
Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing I noticed immediately about, you know, your press shots and everything.
Yeah, of course.
And it's like, not to knock you at all. It's like, but... That's not Mike.
No, it's Rinzen.
No, that's Rinzen, of course. And, you know,
and I really enjoy that. And I think it comes from partially from the fact that I was an English major in college. So I was constantly studying stories and narratives and these grandiose characters who have these crazy personalities. And it's the stuff of purely fiction. But being able to invent a character yourself, I think that's a really alluring idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never written a book.
There's a freedom in that. I mean,
it's you can call it a fresh start if you want, or a new story, but you can make it anything you want. And I love that. It's like this whole other element aside from making music that's still attached and still associated. It's still part of the creative process.
Well, it probably tickles that side of your brain too, the marketing side of it.
Yeah. It does. And I've grown to really enjoy that aspect as well. Yeah. But yeah, so in terms of the actual name, I think I was searching for like 6 to 7 months just to find the right name. And there was a lot of time spent writing down words I liked and trying to combine them into things. And I don't know, you take everything into account from like the meaning behind the words, even the SEO value. Like if people search this on Google, will they be able to find my name? And it's stupid that that's even a consideration, but it totally is.
Of course it is. Yeah.
Yeah. If I was just to name myself Blue, no one would ever find me. And but so regardless, I was searching for a long time and was very frustrated because it's a hard commitment because you know you're attaching everything to this name and you're going to commit yourself to this for, let's say, the next 10 to 20 years.
Yeah,
that's a big decision to make.
It's a big commitment.
Yeah, and it's scary when you're a new artist and you're like you're already afraid.
Well, the great thing about being a new artist is if it flops, you can just start another.
But no one wants to do that.
You can't do that with your given name. Like you're stuck with that for life.
But no one wants to do that. So you want to pick the right name off the bat. But yeah, fortunately, like right after college, I went to Barcelona and was just hanging out there for a month. I went to this modern art museum and was just walking through and happened to stumble upon this art piece. It was just a mattress hanging suspended in the air. And
do you remember who the artist was?
Anthony Tapais, I believe is his name. Might be mispronouncing his last name. Yeah. So
what museum?
I think it's called the Contemporary Museum of Art in Barcelona. Okay. It's a very modern art museum. I saw this art piece and I was a bit confounded by it because it's a mattress hanging suspended in the air and I just didn't really understand it. I was like, that's a very odd art piece. I'm not quite sure I get it. And so I walked up to it and it had this little heading that said Rinzen, and then in quotations, a moment of sudden awakening. I was like, wow, that's a really cool word.
So it resonated.
It resonated immediately. And then, I mean, It said it was a Japanese word as well. I'm half Japanese. I resonated by that fact. And
all the pieces fell into place.
Yeah, not immediately though. So I mean, I kept walking around the museum. That word just kept hanging around in my brain. This whole time I was already searching for a name. So I don't know. I felt kind of attached to it. I kind of sat on it for a few days, and eventually you have to make that decision. And I decided I really like this word. It kind of speaks a little to my heritage. I like the meaning behind it. A moment of sudden awakening. I'm already into things like Buddhism, and it hit a lot of levels for me. And I decided to go with it.
Right. That makes sense. How long ago was that?
So I graduated in 2014. So that would have been, the summer of 2014. So a little more than 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your debut EP is October of 2017.
Yeah. I only just started putting out music in January.
Well, and it's interesting too, because I remember the stuff you played me 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And certainly, because I've listened to, of course, the new EP and then the track you did with Monster Get Down and even the one before on the We Are Friends compilation.
Sure, yeah.
And there's definitely an evolution sonically. And certainly with the new EP, it's a lot more mid-tempo. It's cooler, quotation, chin strokey, wear a scarf cooler.
Sure.
But what do you think, when you kind of came across what the direction of that EP, because the EP itself sounds like it's obviously a conceptual EP. Yeah. And even there is a story behind it with, basically walking upon, forbidden grounds and all that.
Yeah.
But the EP, the sound of the EP itself, it has an identity.
Sure, yeah.
And it is almost like a Crosstown Rebels kind of
totally.
Thing. And what do you think made you decide that's what you wanted to use as the sound of it?
Yeah.
Or was it just a natural progression?
Yeah, so it wasn't like I set out being like, all right, I'm going to write this concept EP about this forbidden city in the middle of the forest in Asia, and I'm going to write these 3 tracks. It was more just like I was writing tracks for a period of, let's say, 6 to 8 months, and I had these 3 tracks that came out of that just happened to sonically fit together. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. These all kind of inhabit a similar world. I wonder if I can kind of build something out of that. And I happened to go to Japan in the middle of that creative process. And so that was in the back of my mind as well. So I was like, I wonder if I put these 3 tracks together and kind of make it into an EP, can I kind of like build a whole world around this? Mm-hmm. And so with that experience in my mind of traveling to Japan, I just wanted to kind of attach them with this world or environment. And I actually went back in once I had the 3 tracks and added things like forest sounds and like some nature and wind, and even kind of like just these darker textures, just to kind of further place them together in a similar world. But yeah, so I was looking at all the music I had finished and just happened to have these 3 tracks that sat well sonically. But it definitely stems from the fact that I am drawn to a lot of music of stuff like Crosstown Rebels, as you said, and a lot of this music where there's elements of like tribalness to it, but there's also like an air of magic where like you hear these kind of tracks outside and they have these kind of Eastern influenced melodies, or
it's definitely like I could hear it on a boat in Ibiza, like,
yeah, totally.
This is not 4 a.m. music. This is like lounge. The sunset is setting.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's influenced by the fact that, during that Japan trip, I did spend a lot of time where I was just wandering around in nature and a lot of times at sunset. Yeah. And that was very much in my mind when I was kind of branding the EP as well. And yeah, I think, again, the concept came together after the tracks were already written, and I liked that fact. It's like you can kind of take these materials that you have and then use them to build something that's like even greater than the sum is greater than its parts, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
And you think when you were doing that, because the thing is too, because of your background, your marketing brain is thinking, if I give this thing a theme,
yeah,
it's more marketable.
Yeah.
And is that part of the whole thought process too, or is it like it was kind of these tracks? They all fit the same vibe, and
no, it definitely is. I mean, I think
you internalize it too.
Yeah, but I think I'm constantly trying to ask myself, how can I make this more than just music, or how can I connect with people on a deeper level? And I think people want a story, or a concept, or they want they want imagery, or they want something that's a little more cinematic, something that, I mean, I think a lot of people already picture images when they listen to music, and I think if you can kind of help them to do that even more and kind of give them this specific world to really enter when they're listening, I mean, people respond to that, and that's what I've noticed already just from releasing this one EP.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's only your first one.
Yeah.
And you feel like the response has been healthy, positive?
Yeah, no, honestly, I had no expectations because it's my first EP.
Right.
And I don't like to set expectations in general. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But no, I've been just really blown away by the amount of people who I don't even know who are kind of reaching out, and just people online who have said nice things about the EP. I mean, obviously, like, I would hope that my friends would support me in this, and they have. But the part that surprises me is when someone from across the world reaches out and says that they connected with the EP, or they randomly stumbled upon that. Yeah. Because I'm new to this, I haven't had that before, so it's stuff like that where it's like whoa, like I've never experienced that before.
Yeah,
so
it's a trip.
It's exciting. Yeah.
Have you gotten anyone from Japan?
No, I've gotten people from China.
Interesting.
Yeah. But, I mean, at least no one's reached out to me personally from Japan. Yeah.
Then it would really be full circle. That's,
Yeah, I need to play a Forbidden City show in like Kyoto. That would be full circle.
That would be cool. That would be super cool. I've never done that.
So that was actually my favorite part of when I did visit Japan, was getting to see Kyoto. Mm-hmm. And when I was there, I had this idea like, wow, what if, a few years from now, if I could just rent a house for, let's say, 2 months here and just write an EP. Like, it's a very romantic idea. I'm just like, that would be...
No, I love that. I really do. I've done experiences like that before. Not in Japan, but I went out to Joshua Tree with 30 Seconds to Mars a year ago.
Yep.
Just to, get out of LA.
Exactly.
And, just be in the space of, and really it turned into just rock climbing with Jared for 3 days because that's what he likes to do. But even so, just being in that environment, when we'd come back from rock climbing, then you'd be in this house and there'd just be 3 of us.
Yeah.
And you're disconnected, and you can write purely from whatever emotion you're feeling at that moment. Mm-hmm. And there's no cell phone reception out there. Yep. So you're just,
I love that.
You're off the grid.
Yeah.
And it's really healthy.
Yeah.
I find, certainly for the creative process, I've just considered just going out there on my own, just like Airbnb-ing a cabin for 3 days.
Yeah.
And
totally.
I know I'm going to go totally insane just being by myself in a cabin in the middle of nowhere. And while that might be physically unhealthy, for the art, I think it might be really good.
Yeah, so. I mean, it's the curiosity that pulls me. Like, what's going to come out when you do that? Like, what might you end up writing in that kind of circumstance?
Yeah,
and that's why I love the idea of being in a foreign country, and you're out of your comfort zone, and you're in this new area where you can be exploring it during the day or the night, and you come back to the studio, as you were saying,
and you reflect on that.
You bring that experience into the studio, and you're making stuff that sounds completely different than if you were in your home environment.
Yeah. I think any artist needs that.
Yeah.
Especially when you live in a metropolitan city where everything becomes very normalized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you from LA originally?
Yeah, so well, kind of. I have to give a qualifier, but I was LA County. I was born in Redondo Beach. I grew up.
LA.
Yeah, some people wouldn't say, but yeah, I claim it to be LA.
It's LA County.
Exactly.
It's not Orange County.
No, yeah.
That's a different breed.
Yeah. So I've been here most of my life. I spent 4 years in the Bay for college, and then came back here.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Where would you move?
Yeah, so I've thought about this a lot, and I like being by bodies of water, I've figured out. And I think the place I would go would be Barcelona.
Yeah.
And again, I spent a month there after college and just fell in love with the city.
Yeah.
There's just a certain energy to it where it's very international, very cosmopolitan. The food is amazing. the music scene is unreal. Like,
Yeah.
oh my God. But even their, just the schedule of their daily life, they eat meals very late, like 10 p.m. or 11 p.m., which I'm totally about.
Which is what I do.
Exactly. And then they'll go out maybe at like midnight or 1 a.m. And then people are still dancing and partying till like very, very early in the morning.
Sure.
And just everyone I encountered there was so friendly. I speak a little bit of Spanish already.
Yeah.
And
well,
then
growing up here, of course.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then just the climate is obviously amazing. You're close to the rest of Europe. So I've always thought if I were to move to another city, I would want to move there.
Barcelona.
Yeah, it's not on the immediate horizon, but definitely I would like to be there for a few years at some point in my life before I settle down or anything like that.
It's been in my head a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Barcelona or just different cities?
Paris.
Paris, yeah. Why is that?
I like the culture.
Yeah, okay. I haven't actually been, but...
I like the culture. I like the language. And the women.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just like the French.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
It's pretentious and I like that.
Yeah, yeah. I like it too because there's a lot of history attached with it. You have things like modernism, which, you know, was heavily rooted in Paris. And I think it's a romantic idea to be able to work in a cafe in Paris, even if you were just reading a newspaper or, you know, just reading a book. But yeah, it's a very alluring idea, I think.
Yeah.
my whole thing, though, is I feel like it's really important for me right now to be in Los Angeles. And I know that's a large part of the reason why you're here is just the music industry is really rooted here.
Of course.
And I can't tell you how impactful it's been for my own career, just being here and meeting the people here. And I mean, you become friends with people who are very much on the same journey as you, and they're only going deeper into the industry. And it's very cool to like watch everyone kind of go into their own niche and get a little bit deeper. And I don't know, it would be hard for me to leave that just because I've found such a community here already.
Yeah,
and such a base that I don't know.
And what I love about it too, this doesn't hold true for everybody, but because so many people in the industry are here, it's less impressive.
Yeah.
So there can be less egos. There are also all the egos. Like, let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah.
But the way I look at it is like, yeah, I have a friend who does that. And it's, sure, he runs that company, but that's just what he does.
Exactly.
And like, this is what you do. And these are what my other artist friends do. It's just what they do.
You have a relationship with them outside of that. Right. So it's almost to the fact that at that point, whatever you do in the music industry is secondary.
But because it's so common that everyone's basically in some kind of industry in some form here.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily put people on a higher podium.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, this is just what we do.
Yeah.
And I love that.
I think LA has that stigma for being very much like a networking city and all that.
Well, it can be.
Yeah, for 100%. And I'm definitely find myself in those situations. But at least what I've experienced in the past, like let's say last year or 2 years, is that I have all these friends who are working in the industry, but what everyone really is looking for is just connection and friendship.
Yeah,
and they're not, I mean, sure, they're looking to network in some circumstances, but beyond that, I mean, we're all just looking for like-minded human beings.
We're human beings.
Yeah.
We're just looking for someone to be a part of.
Exactly. And I found that like so much that's where your true friendships lie. It's like you find those people who, you may work in the same industry, but I mean, that's not why you're hanging out.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It's imperative. The tragedy for me is I find the people I grow closest to, they live in Europe at this point.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there artists?
They're musicians.
Yeah. Okay.
Certainly. I think it's just a different mentality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think also because they're older.
Yeah.
They're past the rat race of trying to make it. They've done their own thing. They have their own lives.
Yeah.
Half of them have kids at this point.
Sure.
They have a farm and they're living their thing.
They have a farm. Wow.
Husband and wife duos. The idea of that kills me every time because that's like my ideal. That in like my romantic head because that's how my parents are. You know.
Okay.
So if you want to get like really edible about it, like how I view my life is ultimately, my wife is an artist. That is how I see it because that's what I grew up under. So I connect really heavily with couples who have that kind of relationship. But yeah, it's funny. I've definitely noticed recently most of what pulls me, certainly to Europe in particular, is my relationships with artists who are friends, but also artists I look up to.
Sure.
And I look up to a lot of my friends. So that is, I think you should, I think that's healthy.
Yeah. I think as you were touching on, there's a different mentality over there where you're right. It doesn't feel as frantic as it does sometimes over here.
Yeah.
It feels like maybe it's because it's, especially electronic music is more ingrained in the culture there.
Yep.
Everyone over there seems way more, I don't know if relaxed is the right word, but they're very much in their routine, and like they're not as like shady, or I mean, I'm sure that still exists over there, but it just seems like on the whole they're more content just to be in the role, to play the long game, to really develop their crafts, and they're not as concerned with like marketing tactics per se. Whereas over here in LA, I think, and it could be the fact that the market is so crowded, but everyone is looking just for that shortcut or that one marketing tactic.
I think that's
going to cut above the noise.
I definitely, because LA is more smoke and mirrors than anywhere I've ever known.
Yeah.
And that's also a byproduct of just the concentration of people trying to do it here.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. I mean, there's way more noise here, and standing out is...
And then people do impossible. Awful things just to try to get to that next level.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just the nature of the beast,
Sure.
That's humanity trying to take advantage of a situation.
And I think that's the hard part about what I've experienced too, is like trying to start a new project within this climate. It's very daunting.
Yeah.
The fact that like, do we really need another LA producer making a house in techno? Like, are you know?
We need more of those than dubstep.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah. I just mean like it gets in your mind for sure. It's just how can I do something different? How can I contribute something unique and significant? How can I not just be another person just trying to follow in the footsteps of everyone else? And it's daunting when you're a new artist, and yeah, you want to create something that creates an impression in people's mind. And I think that fact alone causes a lot of people not to put out music, or just not to pursue it at all, just because... Well,
sure, that's just the fear.
Yeah.
So I have a funny question for you, because you sent me that new track you're working on.
Yeah.
Called The War of Art.
Yeah.
Have you read the book, The War of Art?
Yeah, that's what I named it after.
Okay, I was wondering
Stephen
if that...
Pressfield. Yeah.
Yep. I wondered if that's what you were referencing or not. Okay.
So it's funny because I read that book actually while I was at Icon. One of the teachers recommended it. And
Good on them.
Yeah, and this nice man named Valente. Shout out to Valente. He recommended it. It was not on the curriculum or anything. It was just like to all his students, like
read it.
This is basically mandatory. I can't actually tell you that it's mandatory, but it's mandatory.
Yeah.
And it changed my entire life. Yeah. I had never read a book that spoke to me so quintessentially, where it was like every page, it was speaking a different truth to me. And it was one of those books where it's like you're reading it and you just don't want it to be over. And the entire time you're reading it, you have that fear in the back of your head, like, oh man, I'm halfway through, or oh man, I only have a third left.
I mean, the book, the idea, every page is the same.
Yeah.
It's just 100 pages of get off your ass.
Yeah, true. It's spoken in like different lessons and different metaphors.
Yeah, but it's the same idea.
Yeah. And the other nice thing about it is it's the kind of book that you can return to and continually read.
Time after time.
Yeah. But it's so funny because after I read that book, I had the response to it. And I've become an evangelist for the War of Art.
Really?
So much so that there was a point when I bought 8 to 10 copies, and I kept them in the back of my car.
Really?
Because I would continually have these conversations with friends who were in a creative pursuit, and I'd be like, have you read the book, The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield? And they would say no, and I'd say, well, I happen to have a copy. You should have this copy.
I have 2 copies on my bookshelf.
because one was bought for someone else, and then I never gave it to her. So.
I personally have a few copies, but I think it's one of the best books you can give people because
I think I've bought it 5 times.
That's what I mean. Yeah, I have so many copies because I want other people to have that reaction I've had to it. Because,
do you read a lot?
I do. Yeah. Well, I was an English major.
Oh yeah,
so
of course you do.
Yeah. But I mean, a lot of people that might turn them off from reading because you're reading so much for school and I think for a couple of years out of college, I didn't read that much, but and now I've really picked it up again.
What do you read?
Yeah. So I try to always read one fiction book at the same time I'm reading something nonfiction, like The War of Art. I like reading something that's a little bit more challenging, like let's say like Joseph Campbell or something. Something that like I wouldn't necessarily read every day because it's daunting. And
the whole Bleed Together EP.
Yeah.
That is all
Hero's
Joseph,
Journey,
dude.
Yeah.
Well, some of that, some of Goddesses, some of it's Joseph Campbellisms the entire way. It's funny you brought him up. He's one of my favorite authors.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, same with my EP, Forbidden City. I tried to frame it in 3 phases where like you had each section of the hero's journey, like the call, the trial, the return. And it's funny, I completely forgot that that's how I framed it, and someone else brought it up to me. I'm like, oh yeah, that was the point. But yeah, so I like balancing something like that, but with something that's a lot easier to read. So I read a lot of science fiction. It's probably my favorite genre. A little bit of fantasy as well. Yeah. But something that's just entertaining to read that kind of, it's a form of escapism for sure. It's like you read this book and it just takes you into their world and like, you don't have to think. You're just immersed in it. Yeah. It's really nice to just like read, sometimes I read it in the studio when I'm bouncing tracks and it's just taking a while, or often before bed, Yeah. But it's nice to have that balance of something that's challenging and that I wouldn't necessarily want to read every night for pleasure.
Right.
But then having something that's like really easy just to sink into and just enjoy. Yeah.
So what are your 2 books right now?
Let's see. Well, I'm reading Joseph Campbell right now, The Hero of a Thousand Faces.
Yeah.
And then I'm also reading Neuromancer by William Gibson.
Okay, I know that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the it's sci-fi, but it's also the first cyberpunk novel.
Yeah.
I think it's the first cyberpunk novel.
Okay.
Really enjoying that because it's set in futuristic Tokyo, which I don't know. I tend to draw a lot of inspiration from these things because, I like drawing inspiration from like dystopian.
Yeah, I was all into dystopia as well.
Yeah,
1984, Brave New World.
Exactly. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was cool because in college I literally had a course that was entirely dedicated to dystopian literature.
I took a Utopia course, but
we
read mostly
opposite.
dystopias.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. There's not many utopian books out there, at least that are as popular.
It's not as fun. Happiness is way more like
and even if it
way
is
less exciting than misery.
Even if it is a utopia, like something like The Giver, there's always some like
The Giver is
element.
dystopian.
Well, that's what I mean. They present a utopian society, but there's always this underlying sense of something's wrong.
Think The Giver was probably like realistically that was my first dystopian book, and that was one of my favorite books when I was a kid.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah,
I got really into dystopians for a while.
Yeah. And it's cool for something like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. I mean, that was literally turned into Blade Runner.
Yeah.
And like I'm huge into dystopian movies as well and film. Yeah. So I think it pairs well with electronic music, especially because you're already writing music rooted in kind of futurism.
Technology.
You're using exactly, and then a lot of it is obviously written in minor and these darker tones and progressions. And I think it's a natural pairing with dystopia.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. But, so back to The War of Art, though. That book kind of kickstarted my own interest just in studying creativity. Yeah. And I ended up getting really into Elizabeth Gilbert. Okay. She got famous because she wrote Eat, Pray, Love, which was like the big travel narrative, and she had this whole spiritual awakening. But she actually became this huge proponent of creativity and the creative process and kind of taking a positive approach to that. And she wrote this book called Big Magic, and that's always my second recommendation to people after The War of Art, because it's a very positive approach to creativity. It's basically taking this subject that causes so much agony for so many people and spinning it in a more uplifting light, an encouraging light, and just the same as the War of Art. It's had a very profound impact on my own creative process and just my own sanity when trying to make art.
Have you done The Artist's Way?
I have. Julia Cameron.
Okay.
I did that this year.
Okay. That's a big one.
That's a 10-week process.
Oh, that's intense.
It's very intense.
Morning pages?
I still do them.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're also, oh my God, it's a labor.
Yeah.
It's not easy to wake up and the first thing you do is, I'm just going to write 2 pages.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it takes me 20 to 30 minutes and.
Well, my rule was wait till I have that first cup of coffee.
Okay.
And then once I have that cup of coffee, then I can sit down and train of thought, just go for it.
But like having the discipline to do that every day is difficult, and
it's really healthy though.
It is. I get a lot out of it. And the days I miss,
you notice it.
I notice
it's
it.
like not exercising for a day.
Yeah.
Like it's really bizarre.
Yeah. That book was also very powerful, and I got so much out of it. It's the kind of thing that I fully intend on revisiting just a year later, just to like put myself through it. It's hard though, because it's essentially all self-directed, right?
Oh yeah. No one's standing over your back with a whip.
Exactly.
Like that's all you.
And it's not like a traditional discipline. I mean, you're studying creativity. Yeah. You're doing creative exercises that at times feel like childhood activities. You know, you're making collages and you're collecting stones for some of the exercises. And when you think about how ridiculous that is. But I got a lot out of it, I must say. And the other thing that blew me away was that book is I think it's 2 decades old or something. It's
yeah. It's been around since the 90s.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
I love the fact that people have treated creativity as this kind of almost philosophical subject for that long. Is. No, I agree. But
I mean, the mentality behind it, the philosophy behind creativity is really fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm way into that, certainly.
I think it's beneficial to study if you're in a creative field, because it kind of it gives you a flashlight to navigate this this convoluted darkness of creativity.
Yeah.
Labyrinth.
No, it is labyrinth.
Yeah, 100%.
There's a lot of uncertainty in it, and I find certainly reading anything that not only piques my curiosity, but inspires me to look at things through a different light. Mm-hmm. That's healthy.
Sure. I think people underestimate how mental creativity is.
It's emotionally exhausting. Oh my God.
Yeah, and I think it's so easy to get stuck in a rut where you find yourself not creating for weeks at a time. And for anyone who's been through that, they know it's devastating. So just being able to have tools that can help you understand that and help you get out of that is huge. I mean, you've heard stories of people who go through an entire year of just creative block or writer's block. And that, I can't even imagine that.
I can't. I've had a solid 3 months of that before.
Yeah.
And that was,
it's hell.
Borderline suicidal.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine a year.
That's what I mean, but it happens.
Yeah.
There was even a TED Talk with Sting recently. I don't know how recent it was, but he talked about the fact that, he went through this prolonged writer's block of, I think, a few years. And
really,
you're talking about one of the most prolific artists of all time. And the fact that he's experiencing that, someone as naturally gifted as him, it's it just reminds you about how universal it is.
Well, and how fragile it is also.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. If he was wondering, maybe it's the gift of creativity. It can be so easily given. Maybe it can be so easily taken away.
Aren't all things?
Yeah. But that's why I come back to people like Elizabeth Gilbert and Stephen Pressfield.
Yeah.
They have a very rational approach to it, where it's you may not be inspired or impassioned all the time. That doesn't matter, though. As long as you show up and do your work, even if it's subpar, even if it's not inspired by the heavenly muse, I mean, you're still showing up and doing your part, and eventually something's going to click. And if it doesn't, I mean, then you've done all you could do. You showed up every day.
But if you don't show up, the muse is never going to appear.
Exactly. Or it might, and you might not be there. You might not be ready. You might be, you might be so disenchanted by the fact that you haven't made anything that when it does show up, you're afraid to even start.
Right.
So I like that. I like their approach.
I like that ethos a lot. I definitely subscribe to that.
Yeah. I just like the idea of having more control over it. Because if you were to give away all your power to the fleeting chance of inspiration, you would be sitting in your house all day waiting for inspiration to strike. And sometimes it might, sometimes it might not. And
but it's out of your control at that point.
Yeah. But if you do show up to work every day, as one would hope, then there's a much greater chance that when it does strike, you're in a position to actually utilize it.
And on top of it, just by being there, you create it.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it too.
Momentum is huge, and that's something I've experienced a lot. It's like you might have a good day in the studio, then you end up having a good week, or you finish a track.
Right.
I mean, just finishing something gives you creative confidence.
It hits me another way.
Yeah.
I finish something, and then I hit a roadblock for a few days after.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, like the minute I finish something, it's like a creative hangover.
Okay.
And then I'm pretty kind of creatively useless for a few days.
Okay.
But
why do you think that is?
I think a lot of it is because I get really intensely emotionally involved into what I'm working on.
Yeah.
And once it's finished, I need basically recharge time.
Okay. Yeah.
And because I've put so much of my brain, so much of my soul, whatever you want to call it, into it, that by the time I finally, print the master or print the final mix or whatever, I'm just checked out.
Sure.
I'm totally checked out. And then I need recovery time.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing I battle with is expectations. Because let's say you finish that amazing track, immediately you're expecting the next thing you write to be of that same caliber. And when it inevitably is not, you get disappointed and you lose that momentum. So
I don't think of it that way at all.
Yeah?
No.
That's good.
Everything I do is individual.
Okay. So you don't reference or compare anything, you mean?
Well, I reference, from a technical side.
Yeah.
Sure.
Not from a technical side, though. Yeah.
But I don't look at things, or I try not to look at things, I should say, as, this track I feel like was so good and this has to be, better than that or as good as that. I don't. I look at things standing on their own.
Okay.
And if it's in the place of like a concept album, concept EP, then I'm looking at that as, does this relate to the other tracks involved?
Sure.
But
not from a qualitative or subjective standpoint, where you're not worried about, does this stand up in quality to it? As long as it's thematically similar.
I mean, maybe it's arrogant. I just assume it does.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
I mean, if it's made it to the point where I'm finishing it,
true.
I know it's good enough.
That's true, because I mean, there's a lot of mental barriers just to get to that fact.
And there is, and there's a lot. Most ideas don't make it to that point.
Yeah, of course.
So once it's made it to the point, basically, the point of no return.
Yeah.
If it's there, I know it's good enough.
Yeah.
And then it's just a matter of, figuring out the detail work, tweaking it to the point of where, it is where it's supposed to be. And whatever that means is completely dependent on the track itself.
Sure.
But once it gets to that point, I don't think about it at all.
Okay.
Then I just think about what does this track need so I can actually finish it.
Yeah.
So it serves its purpose, and whether that's standing on its own or whether it's, a smaller piece of a bigger whole.
Yeah. Do you ever get tripped up in that moment where you have to decide, is this idea good enough for me to see all the way through? Can this stand as a full track?
No.
You don't.
The reason being is if I have to question it, I know it's not.
Okay. But for me, at least, there's times when there's a good idea in there and it's not quite fully realized, but it has potential. And sometimes just the mere fact of seeing it through brings about these other ideas and these improvisations that turn it into something that is worthy of completing. So, I mean, for me, it's a much more gray area where it's like you have this foundation. There's no saying if it's actually going to be something that you'll really enjoy at the end of the day, but there's something in there. And again, you're not quite sure if you'll be able to pull it out, but you've got to commit to it at least just to see if it does come out.
Right. No, I understand that. I find for myself, when I'm in that situation, if I keep trying different ideas just to make something work, I might find one that I end up liking.
Yeah.
But it'll never have the same feeling as when I just hit something.
Of course. I mean, there's always those rare times, and these are the times we all live for, when you're writing something and it just clicks immediately.
Like, that is it.
And then the next idea is there, and it's, again, this is what Elizabeth Gilbert speaks of. It's almost like there's a muse channeling through you, and it's just like you automatically know what to do next, and it's like you're on one of those those moving platforms or escalators in the airport where you're just walking forward on the platform, and all of a sudden you're moving twice the speed but half the effort. We all have those moments, but it's not every time.
No, it's not, and I know not to force it on certain tracks.
Yeah.
When I get to the point, if I'm on a track and I'm trying idea after idea, trying to make one idea work, I just try something new.
Sure.
I move on from that, and ideally, I do fight it.
Yeah.
Let's not kid ourselves. But I find I'm more likely to, if I start something 100% new, I'm more likely to find that idea.
Okay.
Than if I were just fighting the same
Sure.
Demon over and over, trying to make it work.
Yeah.
And it's not to say, there have been plenty of tracks, certainly where eventually an idea got recontextualized into an idea that I ended up really liking. But that never happened immediately. Yes. That's usually 6 months later. I came back to an old project file and I looked at something like totally disconnected from the original emotion of whatever I was doing.
Yeah.
And then I really could see it in that new light.
Yeah.
And when that happened, that's when I've been able to do things like that. But it's never been immediate.
Yeah. What I think is so fascinating is the fact that no matter how good you get or how deep you go, you still encounter these same fundamental problems. You would think that people who have been studying their craft for 20 to 30 years would have it so dialed down that they would never encounter these issues. But again, there's something so universal or foundational about it.
Because it's about you.
Yeah.
You're the jury on this one. No one else. When you're in that room by yourself, you're the judge.
It's true, yeah. And your tastes change, your standards change. Yeah.
So what you might think is great, I think what I've just done is shit. And and vice versa. That's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, of course.
So, and I like that. That's the beauty of it. That's what keeps us searching.
Yeah. It keeps it new, and I think that's what's attractive to me about having a craft that's rooted in creativity. It's that it never gets easy. It's always a different challenge, and you never quite know where it's going to take you.
No. How do you find... because you're relatively new at this.
Yeah.
Kira's saying hi. In the past year, how do you think your process has changed?
Yeah, well, I think I've been able to establish a routine, which I never quite had before. I think before, I would produce when I could, a lot of the times in headphones, a lot of the time at a home studio, but it was always a bit sporadic. You would get time in when you can. You're working around a full-time job, Yeah. Now I think I'm much more regimented in the fact that I'm showing up to the studio basically every day, around the same time every day, and it's increased my productivity tenfold. Just the fact that I know I'm going to be at the studio, so that part of anxiety that's in my head about I got to work on this track or I got to finish that idea, it's alleviated by the fact that I know I'm going to have 5 to 6 days this week to work on that idea. So it's become much more regulated in a sense. It's become more disciplined. And as a result, I think I'm writing better music. I'm certainly writing more music and finishing more tracks. But, it's hard because you get into these routines and then you end up traveling for a week or a weekend and you totally get thrown out of it and then you lose all momentum. So I do the best I can to stay in one place and really ingrain myself in this routine. But I think that's been the biggest difference, is just taking a more systematic approach to creativity and producing.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
What's next?
Well, I want to do another concept EP, just like I did the Forbidden City, and kind of, make a different world.
Brand it.
Yeah. I want to go even bigger and have it be paired with either a short film or I don't want to say music video, but something in an extended
kind of
visual
multimedia
format.
piece.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of take that world concept that I have, but make it even more immersive or visual. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, I've been finishing a lot of tracks. Just, trying to line up everything for 2018. I have some performances this year, which I'm excited about.
Yeah.
I haven't done many live shows yet. So, and that's like something I'm pretty passionate about. I try to wait for the right opportunity. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited to finally play some gigs and be able to prepare for them and kind of show people the whole live side of the project. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And is it a DJ thing? Is it bigger than DJ? Like, how are you?
Yeah, for now it's just a DJ thing, just CDJs. But I have this whole crazy idea of what I want the live show to be. And it's still probably a year or two away.
Sure.
But I like having the idea in the back of my mind just so I can kind of start moving the pieces into place.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
What would it entitle?
Yeah, it gets pretty weird. So this will actually be up your alley because
I like weird.
It's rooted in the fact that I know 4D audio and surround sound is going to become a big thing. Again, I know that you've been big into the Dolby Atmos stuff. So I have this idea of a live show which fully utilizes like surround sound.
Sure.
And I want to be able to create this environment where like you're hearing the audio from all around you. Let's say you're placing people in like, let's say a forest and you're having like leaf sounds around them and like there's trees on the walls and the visualizer's like immersing people. Mm-hmm. And you can really hear that. You can hear like the wind rushing overhead or something rumbling underneath. And then to be able to play that kind of mystical yet cerebral techno like within that and really kind of placing people in this whole different environment, even though you're inside of a concert venue.
So you're doing Hidden Valley without being a Hidden Valley, basically.
Yeah. I just have this idea of like, you build that environment and then let's say you have a fucking thunderstorm in the middle of your show and then you're playing this like dark techno and dropping that in tandem with the storm.
Are you going to have like the fire extinguishers go off at that point?
Hopefully not. But it gets even weirder. Like I have the idea of like, let's say you have thunder and rain going. Like I want to be able to fucking see the rain coming from the ceiling. I want you to be able to smell the rain. Yeah. And then, that's just like the production front. And then I've been pretty heavy on using like my Moog Sub 37 and TR8. I eventually want to have those on stage as well and like performing with those. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like this hybrid show where it's like you're using some of your gear live, but you're also just presenting like this environment or landscape and it's dynamic.
Well, it makes it a show.
Exactly.
It's no longer a club. It becomes a show.
And that's what I want to do. I want to bring the show element, but to the house and techno world.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly wouldn't be the first to do that. It's been done before, but I want to do it in a way that's integrating visuals and surround sound and just these supernatural elements, basically, that you haven't quite seen before with house and techno.
Right. And there's not many people who've done surround. Max Cooper does it.
He does, and I'm a big fan of him. Yeah.
But, aside from that...
Stimming.
That's right. Stimming's done it. Amon Tobin had his whole ISAM thing.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different ballpark entirely.
Yeah. And again, I think I have this vision, but I don't expect to be doing it next year per se. Like this is just something I like to keep in the back of my mind and just as a focal point.
Yeah.
Just something like...
As a goal.
Yeah, and I know that everything I'm doing in the time between is eventually leading up to that.
Yeah.
It just gives me a sense of focus.
Yeah.
And something to aspire towards.
Yeah.
And I just like, it comes back to that idea of building a character. I like building a show and building, integrating.
The theater of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course.
I like the theatrical element of it.
Yeah, it makes sense, man.
Yeah.
Lastly.
Yeah.
Especially since, this is interesting, too, because when I've asked this question before, they're usually not journalists.
Okay.
What are you listening to right now?
Yeah. Oh, it's funny you asked that. So I obviously make more like house and techno stuff, and my tastes go pretty dark and weird in that direction. But what I find is that from a listening standpoint, I'm listening to 80% classical music these days.
Like whom?
So there's this radio station in LA called KUSC. Uh-huh. It's like a public station of USC. They just play classical music without interruption and no ads 24 hours a day.
Sure.
They're my go-to.
Okay.
So I find myself listening to them on the way to the studio, in commutes to traffic. But, beyond that, I listen to a lot of like big film composers, like obviously John Williams. I'm very attracted to all his stuff. Mm-hmm. There's even this thing called the Planets Suite, which is this older classical piece that actually was the basis for John Williams' score for Star Wars. And it's like this, I think it's like this 9-piece suite that, and each composition is dedicated to a different planet. And I listen to that one a lot because you can hear like this influence that went into Star Wars. But
sure,
yeah, it's funny. I like studying these guys because in my mind they're the best producers. Because instead of a DAW, instead of this electronic toolkit, they have an entire orchestra, and the way they're arranging it, they're very savvy of the mixing, and they're making sure you can hear every instrument in the mix, and
it's a whole different level of arrangement.
Yeah. And then just obviously just from the musical standpoint, their harmonies and their progressions and their knowledge of theory, it goes beyond anything else I ever listened to. Yeah. So I mean, I draw a lot of inspiration from it, even if it doesn't always show up in my music. It's just somewhere in my brain, those harmonies are doing something.
It doesn't shock me.
Yeah.
Your music has a lot more space in it than a lot of other house and techno.
And I think as time goes on, I'm probably only going to get deeper into this. I'm going to one day have season tickets to see the LA Phil and like every month. But I'm really drawn to that idea of integrating classical instrumentation and classical music into house and techno. I think there's something really timeless about those instruments and that sound that people respond to. And I think there's a reason we still listen to...
I think there's the human element.
Yeah. But even beyond that, it's the strength of the musical ideas, the fact that we still listen to Chopin and Mozart. It's like there's a timelessness in their melodies and harmonies that we respect and that stays in our mind.
Yeah.
And, eventually I want to be able to channel that same strength or that same potency in my own melodies.
I think that's wise. I think you'll get a lot more out of that than kind of the more incestuous route that a lot of producers take, where they really listen to just what's insular to their community.
Sure. But, there's the other flip side of the coin where, like, when you are DJing a lot, you got to listen to, like, the new stuff that's coming out. And
only for the sake of DJing, not for the sake of making it.
Yeah.
Like, not for creating.
Yeah. Well, yes and no, because there definitely still is stuff that comes out nowadays that still very much inspires me, like Stefan Bodzin, Recondite, Macioplex. These guys that I do believe are pushing the envelope and are channeling like more classical tropes in their music, So I think there's something to be gained from all of it. Copycatism is a whole different thing, but just listening to their music and seeing how they're using the new technology of the day, I think that's all important too.
That was Rinzen. So you can go check out his debut EP on Mousetrap. It's called Forbidden City. And I will see you guys next week.